Did you ever wonder why some males acquire some physical characteristics of females and also why some females acquire some physical characteristics of males?
Yes!
Did you ever wonder why females develop breast diseases, ovarian syndrome, menstrual irregularities, nervousness, mood swings, or hot flashes?
Yes!
Do you also wonder why males experience wet dreams and hair loss?
Yes!
Do you know someone who has diabetes and you wonder what causes it and how to prevent it?
Yes!
Do you wonder how you get those pimples and acne?
Yes!
Then come and join us as we explore a human person's endocrine system. Hormones and the endocrine system. Few sights in nature are as impressive as a male lion, or also called as the Panthera leo, stalking prey across the savanna. Often weighing more than 500 pounds, males of the species are easily recognized by the thick mane about their necks. Females lack manes. The lion is thus the only feline species to display a distinct phenotypic difference between the sexes. Research has shown that the color of a lion's mane correlates with age and food intake. In general, the darker the mane, the healthier the lion. Females mate more frequently with darker maned males, perhaps because this indicates a greater ability to obtain food, while males avoid other darker maned males, perhaps because this indicates greater fighting prowess. Manes develop at puberty when male lions, like the males of many mammal species, begin to produce high levels of the sex hormone testosterone. Hormones are chemicals that help regulate body functions such as energy use, metabolism, and growth. The primary role of testosterone and related male sex hormones is to promote the development and maintenance of uniquely male traits such as male reproductive anatomy. Testosterone also affects many secondary sexual characteristics such as growth and maintenance of a mane and the greater height and weight of males compared to females. This chapter focuses on how hormones help coordinate activities in different parts of the body, enabling organ systems to function cooperatively. As with other chapters in this unit, we continue to explore the general theme of homeostasis. In this chapter, we explore how chemical signals maintain an animal's dynamic steady state. We begin with an overview of how hormones work in all vertebrates and then turn to the major components of the human endocrine system. Along the way, we consider many examples of the effects of hormonal imbalance. The nature of chemical regulation. Chemical signals coordinate body functions. Animals rely on many kinds of chemical signals to regulate their body activities. A hormone is a substance that acts as one such chemical signal. The basic units of the human endocrine system are special kinds of glands. Unlike other glands, endocrine glands secrete their product, called hormones, directly into the bloodstream. The powerful hormones travel everywhere in the body, influencing every aspect of life in very specific ways. Many parts of the body secrete hormones, but 6 major glands are of particular importance to adults. There are the islets of Langerhans in the pancreas, the thyroid and parathyroid, the adrenals, the gonads, and in the head, the pituitary. Every major endocrine gland is a highly structured organ, through which run the smallest blood vessels, the capillaries. Hormones are secreted into the capillaries. Through a microscope, it is possible to see red blood cells as they move through the capillaries and veins. Hormones, however, are not actually visible. They are in solution with the blood plasma, just as salt is in solution with seawater and is invisible. The hormones enter the general circulation. Eventually, they filter back to the capillaries elsewhere in the body. Unlike the red blood cells, hormones travel freely through the capillary walls. Though they travel everywhere in the body, hormones only influence specific target cells. A hormone may have relatively few targets affecting only a few kinds of cells. A different hormone may affect nearly every cell in the body. Every target cell has a chemical receptor which the hormone specifically fits, as a key specifically fits the lock. The receptor may be on the surface of the cell or inside it. A cell that is not a target for a particular hormone has no receptors for it and is not affected by it. Still, other chemical signals, called pheromones, carry messages between different individuals of a species, as in mate attraction. Hormones affect target cells using two main signaling mechanisms. Two major classes of molecules function as hormones in vertebrates. The first class, the amino acid-derived hormones, includes proteins, peptides, polypeptides of only 3 to 30 amino acids, and amines, which are modified versions of single amino acids. They are almost all water-soluble. Hormones of the second main class, the steroid hormones, are small lipid-soluble molecules made from cholesterol. Steroid hormones are synthesized from cholesterol and diffuse across the lipid bilayer of the target cell and into its nucleus. Once inside, they bind to a specific receptor. The hormone receptor complex triggers transcription of specific gene regions of DNA, resulting in the formation of a messenger RNA transcript. The messenger RNA transcript leaves the nucleus and is translated into a specific gene product in the cytoplasm. This specific gene product will function as enzyme for other proteins important for the activity of the organism. The fundamental difference between steroid hormones and amino acid-derived hormones is that lipid-soluble hormones can enter cells because they are nonpolar, while water-soluble hormones cannot enter cells. So when a protein hormone interacts with a cell, it has to bind with a receptor protein, which is what we see right here, and then it stays on the outside, but causes the receptor to cause some action in the inside of the cell. The protein can't get in because most proteins are too big and has some sort of polarity about them that would cause them to get hung up with the phosphate groups on the phospholipid bilayer. So this is the target cell, the plasma membrane, the cytoplasm, the receptor protein, and the protein hormone. The protein hormone binds into the receptor protein. Binded to that receptor, it activates a cytoplasmic signal. Very often, this signal is a chemical called GTP. GTP is like ATP. It does not have quite as much energy available to it, which is why ATP is the preferred molecule for energy used in cells. But GTP functions in much the same way and loses a phosphate group. GTP will activate something called a G protein. The G protein is represented here as a purple oval. Now, the G protein is activating some enzyme. This enzyme in turn causes ATP to become something we call cyclic AMP. Obviously, we are losing phosphate groups here. This C-AMP molecule is going to act as a secondary messenger to take this message that something needs to happen in the cell. It will activate another enzyme, which perhaps activates another enzyme, and so on, until it gets the product that it needs. Now, the first part of this process, if we go back up, where the cursor swirls around, that is the signaling stage of this protein hormone activity. It signals that something needs to happen. Where number 2 is, the section right in here, is called transduction. This is where we are taking the signal, converting it to a form that causes the activity we want to happen. It is also referred to as the secondary messenger system because the C-AMP molecule ultimately is gonna be the thing that activates the enzymes that are actually going to do the work to produce the action that we need to happen. And that is the response. This response is our ultimate goal.
Some endocrine glands are specialists that primarily secrete hormones into the blood. Other organs serve dual roles, having both endocrine and non-endocrine functions. Still, other organs are primarily non-endocrine but have some cells that secrete hormones. Only the sex organs and the cortex of the adrenal gland produce thyroid hormones, the main type of hormone that actually enters target cells.
The hypothalamus is the main control center of the endocrine system. It receives information from nerves about the internal condition of the body and the external environment.
Hypothalamus responds by sending out appropriate nervous or endocrine signals.
Its hormone signals control the pituitary gland, which in turn secretes hormones that influence numerous body functions. In other words, the hypothalamus exerts master control over the endocrine system by using the pituitary gland to relay directions to other glands.
The gland consists of two distinct parts, a posterior lobe and an anterior lobe, both located in the pocket of skull bone just under the hypothalamus. The posterior pituitary is composed of nervous tissue and is an extension of the hypothalamus. It stores and secretes two hormones that are made in the hypothalamus.
In contrast, the anterior pituitary is composed of endocrine cells that synthesize and secrete hormones directly to the blood. The hypothalamus controls the anterior pituitary by secreting two kinds of hormones into short blood vessels that connect two organs, releasing hormones and inhibiting hormones. A releasing hormone stimulates the anterior pituitary to secrete one or more specific hormones, and an inhibiting hormone does the opposite. It induces the anterior pituitary to stop secreting one or more specific hormones.
Again, the hypothalamus is a region in the brain that integrates information from the rest of the body and regulates the rest of the body's endocrine system. An example of an endocrine system regulated by the hypothalamus is the hypothalamal pituitary axis.
Some neurons within the hypothalamus produce and secrete thyroid trophin-releasing hormone, or TRH. TRH is secreted toward the hypothalamal hypophyseal portal vessels carried into the anterior lobe of the pituitary gland, where it stimulates cells to make thyroid-stimulating hormone, or TSH. TRH stimulates the release of TSH in the anterior lobe of the pituitary. TSH enters the bloodstream and is carried to the thyroid gland. At the thyroid gland, TSH stimulates the production and release of thyroxine, a hormone that regulates the metabolic rate of all the cells of the body.
In addition to regulating our metabolic rate, thyroxine inhibits the TRH-containing neurons within the hypothalamus. This inhibition results in decreased release of TRH and thus the decrease in secretion of TSH and thyroxine. This is called the negative feedback loop, and it occurs frequently in the endocrine system. The thyroid regulates your metabolism, appetite, muscle function, blood pressure, and heart rate. The way it interacts with the pituitary gland is an example of the negative feedback loop, a process that is common among the interactions of the body, especially in the endocrine system. Basically, the pituitary functions as the thyroid's thermostat. It can read how much thyroid is in your bloodstream, and when its levels are low, it spits out a thyroid stimulating hormone, or TSH, which travels to the thyroid. The thyroid in turn secretes thyroid hormone, which boosts our metabolism, and that increase in metabolism tells the pituitary to stop sending out TSH. So the effect of the pituitary secretion is the signal to secrete less of it, and that's the negative feedback loop. Of all the pituitary secretions, none has a broader effect than the protein called growth hormone, which promotes protein synthesis and the use of body fat for energy metabolism in a wide variety of target cells. In young mammals, GH promotes the development and enlargement of all parts of the body. Too much GH in adulthood could lead to acromegaly, which stimulates bony growth in face, hands, and feet. In childhood, usually due to pituitary hormone tumor, it can lead to gigantism. In contrast, too little GH in childhood can lead to pituitary dwarfism. The endorphins are body's natural painkillers.
Blood sugar levels are regulated by negative feedback in order to keep the body in homeostasis. The levels of glucose in the blood are monitored by the cells in the pancreas islets of Langerhans. If the blood glucose level falls to dangerous levels, the alpha cells of the pancreas release glucagon, a hormone whose effects on liver cells act to increase blood glucose levels. They convert glycogen into glucose. This process is called glycogenolysis. The glucose is released into the bloodstream, increasing blood sugar levels. When levels of blood sugar rise, whether as a result of glycogen conversion or from digestion of a meal, a different hormone is released from beta cells found in the islets of Langerhans in the pancreas. This hormone, insulin, causes the liver to convert more glucose into glycogen. This process is called glycogenesis, and to force about two-thirds of body cells, primarily muscle and fat tissue cells, to take up glucose from the blood through the GLUT4 transporter, thus decreasing blood sugar. When insulin binds to the receptors on the cell surface, vesicles containing the GLUT4 transporters come to the plasma membrane and fuse together by the process of exocytosis, enabling a facilitated diffusion of glucose into the cell. As soon as the glucose enters the cell, it is phosphorylated into glucose 6-phosphate in order to preserve the concentration gradient, so glucose will continue to enter the cell. Insulin also provides signals to several other body systems and is the chief regulatory metabolic control in humans. There are also several other causes for an increase in blood sugar levels. Among them are the stress hormones such as epinephrine, also known as adrenaline, several of the steroids, infections, trauma, and of course, the ingestion of food. Diabetes mellitus type 1 is caused by insufficient or non-existent production of insulin, while type 2 is primarily due to a decreased response to insulin in the tissues of the body. Both types of diabetes, if untreated, result in too much glucose remaining in the blood, and many of the same complications. Also, too much insulin or exercise without enough corresponding food intake in diabetics can result in low blood sugar. Hyperglycemia is the result of too much glucose remaining in the blood, while hypoglycemia is too much insulin or exercise without enough corresponding food intake in diabetics that cause low blood sugar. Taking care of your diabetes every day. The 4 things you have to do every day to lower high blood sugar are: eat healthy food, get regular exercise, take your diabetes medicine, Test your blood sugar. Experts say most people with diabetes should try to keep their blood sugar level as close as possible to the level of someone who does not have diabetes. This may not be possible or right for everyone. Check with your doctor about the right range of blood sugar for you. Bring a family member or friend with you when you see your doctor. Ask lots of questions. Before you leave, be sure you understand everything you need to know about taking care of your diabetes. Eat healthy food. People with diabetes do not need special foods. The foods on your diabetes eating plan are the same foods that are good for everyone in your family. Try to eat foods that are low in fat, salt, sugar, and high in fiber, such as beans, fruits, vegetables, and grains. Eating right will help you first, reach and stay at a weight that is good for your body. Second, keep your blood sugar in a good range. Third, prevent heart and blood vessel disease. People with diabetes should have their own eating plan. Ask your doctor to give you the name of a dietitian who can work with you to develop an eating plan for you and your family. Your dietitian can help you plan meals to include foods that you and your family like to eat and that are good for you. If you use insulin, give yourself an insulin shot before you eat. Eat at about the same time and the same amount of food every day. Don't skip meals, especially if you have already given yourself an insulin shot because your blood sugar may go too low. If you don't use insulin, follow your meal plan. Don't skip meals, especially if you take diabetes pills because your blood sugar may go too low. Skipping a meal can make you eat too much at the next meal. It may be better to eat several small meals during the day instead of one or two big meals.
The adrenal glands are the glands that mobilize responses to stress, and they are located on top of the kidneys. The adrenals have two distinct divisions or portions. The outer portion is the adrenal cortex, controlled by the pituitary hormone ACTH, which produces hormones with longer-lasting responses to stress in the body, and the adrenal medulla, which secretes adrenaline or epinephrine and noradrenaline or norepinephrine. When the body detects stressful stimuli, the brain and the hypothalamus send nerve signals to the adrenal medulla to secrete adrenaline into the blood. Adrenaline increases the rate in which the heart beats, and in turn, more blood is pumped, carrying oxygen to the muscles and increasing body activity. The second portion of the adrenal cortex, is stimulated by the pituitary hormone ACTH, or adrenocorticotropic hormone, then secretes steroid hormones generally called corticosteroids. In humans, the two main types are mineralocorticoids and glucocorticoids. Mineralocorticoids regulate salt and water balance in order to increase blood volume and blood pressure as a response to stress. Glucocorticoids promote the synthesis of glucose from proteins or fats. Very high levels of glucocorticoids cause side effects such as a weakened immune system, weight gain, and increased risk of diabetes. The gonads, or the sex glands, are responsible for producing sex hormones. These are the testes in males and ovaries in females. They receive instruction from the pituitary gland and the hypothalamus to secrete hormones. The testes secrete androgen, the main one of which is testosterone, while ovaries make estrogens and progestins. Males and females both have all major categories of sex hormones, estrogen, progestin, and androgen, but in varying proportions. In males, having higher ratios of androgens to estrogens, the testosterone is responsible for producing sperm and developing male characteristics like lower-pitched voice, facial hair, and large muscles. In females, having higher ratios of estrogens to androgens, the progestins prepare and maintain the uterus to support an embryo, and the estrogens produce eggs and female characteristics such as higher pitched voice, breasts, and wider hips. One final thing about hormones before we end our chapter. You should know that hormones perform specific functions
and at the same time, one single hormone can perform a variety of functions. Let us take, for example, the peptide hormone prolactin, abbreviated PRL, secreted by the anterior pituitary in the brain. It has many functions, depending on how the organism uses it. In humans, prolactin stimulates mammary glands to produce breast milk. In birds, it stimulates nest building, regulates fat metabolism and reproduction. In amphibians, it stimulates movement toward water for breeding purposes and affects metamorphosis. And in fish that migrate between fresh and salt water, such as salmon, prolactin regulates salt and water balance in their gills and kidneys. This just goes to show that hormones such as prolactin may have been a product of years and years of evolution. The main functions that these hormones carry out in our body and in other organisms have vital roles to development that must not be taken for granted.